non-mirrored camera, or mirrored cameras, that's the right word. And this has changed as well a bit over the years. When I first started shooting mirrorless, every other little add-on you wanted, like say time-lapse. Say you wanted to do time-lapse on a mirrored camera. You have to buy an accessory for it, right? This stuff wasn't built in. They're starting to build more and more of this into mirrored cameras, but it still doesn't even get close to what's inside of a Lumix camera as far as the tech. And that tech just makes my job easier. It makes it more fun. It's cool to have these features in there, these capabilities that simply aren't in the other cameras or cost extra money to add on, which is a drag. You know, you get this great camera, great lens, you're like, I want to do this. Oh, I have to buy another thing to make it do that? This camera's got it built in. So just the tech overall is just super fun in it. And they tend to advance the tech very quickly. If you look at mirrorless cameras as they've been released over the years, and not only new camera models, but even updates to existing camera models. The GH5 is probably one of the best examples of this. The GH5, if you're not familiar with it, is the flagship camera from Lumix right now. It is primarily designed for the cinematographer. It is a hybrid camera, meaning that it shoots both still and video, but all Lumix cameras do that. But it really has emphasis on the video side of things. And when the camera was announced, before it was even shipping, when they first announced it, Panasonic said, these are the features it's going to have on day one. And then in 6 months or so, we're going to release a firmware update that's going to add this. And then in a few more months, we're going to release another firmware update that's going to add this. And it was more advanced shooting features, the ability to shoot 10-bit, 422, 400 megabit internally. If you know what that means, you know how awesome that is. If you don't worry about it. But the ability to shoot this way internally in the camera was something that wasn't there when it was shipped, but was told, the audience was told, the clients were told that this is what they're going to get later. And Panasonic delivered, and it's an incredible, incredible upgrade, and it costs nothing. You buy the camera and it gets firmware updates. Just like buying a Mac and you update the operating system, you get new features. It's the same thing. You get new features when the camera gets a firmware update. And this has happened pretty much across the camera lineup, but especially on the higher end ones. Next, pre-processing. Now, you all know what post-processing is, right? You take a picture, bring it into your computer, and you edit. You're doing processing post-shooting. Well, pre-processing is the idea of making enhancements to the image before you even shot it, dialing in a look in camera. So this is just a few simple samples, but this is a shot that is shot in RAW. So there's the original RAW file, but I tend to shoot RAW plus JPEG almost all the time for a lot of reasons. I'll explain this in a moment. Here's the JPEG that came out of the camera. It's got a different look to it, right? We go back to the previous, there's a little bit flat. It's RAW, right? Of course, this is unprocessed RAW, untouched RAW, I should say. It's a bit flat, the color's a bit muted. There's the look that I dialed in camera. That look is a look that I can deliver to the client. Same thing, just a few kind of before and afters here. Well, not before and after, side by side, but RAW versus JPEG. Hello? Why isn't it going to the next slide? There it goes. Oh, good. Now it's going to... Let us back up a few. There we go. I think that's the... Yeah, there's the original, or RAW, and then a JPEG. So, okay, so why would you do this? Lots of reasons. First of all, if I don't have to work on the file afterwards before I deliver it to the client, or post it on my Facebook page, and whatever it is I'm going to do with it, if I can avoid that, I'd rather be shooting than sitting at the computer editing. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy editing my files, I enjoy playing with Photoshop and Lightroom and whatever, making the images look different, but I'd rather be shooting than doing that. So if I can dial in the look that I want or that my client wants in camera, shoot it that way, and a JPEG comes out of the camera looking like what the client wants, why not deliver the JPEG? You're going to give them a JPEG in the end anyway. Right, that's what you're not going to deliver the raw file, you're going to deliver a JPEG. So if the camera can create a JPEG that you're happy with and the client's happy with, deliver it. There's nothing in the world that says that you have to shoot raw and then process and then deliver a JPEG. You shoot the JPEG or deliver the JPEG that came out of camera if you can. So with that in mind, as long as you get your exposure right, which, come on, you're a pro, you can do this, get the exposure right, you can deliver the JPEG out of camera. But I shoot raw plus JPEG because, let's face it, I still want to have that raw file just in case. Just in case I blow it, just in case the client changes their mind. Oh, I know you shot it really high contrast and saturated, but I changed my mind. Now I want it flat and muted. Thanks. How am I going to do that from a JPEG? Can't do it, not without destroying the file, but from the raw I can. So I'm always going to shoot both. The other advantage of this is if you need to show your client what the image looks like on the back of the camera, whether you need to or you want to. I love doing this. You know, a lot of photographers, they don't know. My client does not look at the back of my camera. Like, come on. I want confidence. I want the client to look at it and say, yeah, that's what I want. I love that excitement of a client looking at the picture going, whoa, this looks so cool. That's awesome. I don't have to say, imagine this in black and white. Non-photographers can't do that. Heck, most photographers can't do that. Imagine this in black. No, but if I can shoot it in black and white, because that's what we're delivering, and the client looks in the back of the camera and they see the shot in black and white, That's really awesome. Right now, I might take it into the computer later and do an even better black and white, but at least I can show them the image in black and white. If I'm shooting tethered, if I've got a setup where I've got my computer in the studio, the camera's on the tripod, I'm shooting tethered, it can go straight to the computer with the processing already applied, and they can look at it there and see what that looks like. I just did, and I'll show you the picture later, I just did a shoot for a group of lawyers and came into my studio. And, you know, these aren't exactly the most lively, fun bunch. Actually, the older guys were the most lively and fun. Go figure. A couple of them were a little bit grumpy. And I probably didn't want to be there. But you show them the picture and they go, ooh, oh, I like that. Yes, now we're on to something. Now I'm going to get some smiles out of you guys. Now you're excited, you're happy, you like what you're saying. Being able to show that to them and not have to say, imagine if you will, is really, really powerful. Then there's the photo plus video aspect. When I first started shooting Lumix, all I shot was photo. And a buddy of mine who used to be on the Luminary team gave me a hard time relentlessly. He'd say, just push the red button. Just do it. Just push the red button. Shoot some video. No, I don't want a video. I'm a still photographer. I don't want a video. Well, then I started pushing the red button. Man, video's cool. I'm doing more video these days than still photography, both for myself and for my clients, and it's just fun. It's cool. It's a whole new way to work. It's a whole new thing to deliver to your clients. And frankly, you can charge more for it. So bonus to that, right? But the cameras do both. Whether you're talking about the cheapest little point and shoot size Lumix camera up to the flagship GH5, they all do photo and video. The higher end ones have better features, more technology, more, better everything, of course. It's what you're paying for when you pay the more money for the bigger cameras. But they all do both. And that to me is huge, to be able to get that look of a still photograph, but through video, and to be able to do it by simply pushing a different button or flipping the camera into a different mode is enormous. And that has really expanded not just my own creativity, but what I'm able to deliver to my clients. These days, like I said, I shoot more video than photo for clients, and I'm personally more excited about video than I am about photography. Whereas 5 years ago, I couldn't care less about video. All I cared about was photography. Neither one is right. It's just what your preference is, and this is where I'm going these days. Other advantages. A common lens mount. Now this is really cool. This is specifically a Micro Four Thirds thing. That lens mount on the Micro Four Thirds, like you buy a Sony, it's got a Sony lens, Canon's got a Canon mount. Micro Four Thirds, a Panasonic Lumix camera is not a Panasonic Lumix mount. It's a Micro Four Thirds mount. Olympus makes Micro Four Thirds cameras. It's the same mount. This mount is an open format, I suppose you'd call it. Anybody in the world can make a camera, make a lens with that mount on it. And as I understand it, there's no licensing on it, so even really inexpensive manufacturers can make really inexpensive lenses, not for any kind of licensing fees, and make these really cheap little lenses for Micro Four Thirds. I don't know how easy it is to find some janky, cheap, plastic, cruddy lens for a Canon or Nikon or Pentax or other cameras, but Micro Four Thirds, you can find lots of them. And that's not to say that they're janky and crappy, it's that they're cool and different, and they're funky and fun, and just get different variety. I have a set of plastic, what are they? I don't remember what they're called. Anyway, plastic little junk lenses, but they're Micro Four Thirds mount and they're fun. They give a look. It is a particular look. I've been remounting a bunch of old Russian vintage lenses, kind of screw mount lenses. You get a little adapter for that, put it on your Lumix camera, away you go. And going back to the what you see is what you get idea, when you're shooting through one of these cruddy lenses, because you're seeing exactly what the image is capturing, you can really manipulate the scene. And if you want lens flare, like these old Russian lenses, they don't have any coatings on them, so they get flare all over the place, really washed out images. But you can take that, you can use that to your advantage. I'm going to show you a video at the very end here, shot with one of those. Actually, am I? Oh no, I lied. I don't have that one with me. Anyway, you can see it on my website. You get some really cool, funky look out of it. And so you get lenses from all these different manufacturers all over the world. One of my favorite lenses is from a Chinese company. It's a $400 lens. It's 25 millimeter, which means it's a 50 millimeter equivalent if you're thinking full frames. It's f/0.95. It's totally mechanical, all manual, no electronics in it whatsoever, no autofocus, no auto aperture, but I love it. I love the look of it. I love the shallow depth of field. It's just a fun lens to shoot with. Lots of different lenses from different manufacturers. I'm just got my hands on, I haven't worked with it much yet, lens from LensBaby. You guys know LensBaby? They have this new, is it Velvet? I think it's called the Velvet lens. It's like this really interesting soft focus for portraits. Really cool lens. Micro Four Thirds mount, pop that on there, away you go. All right, lots of fun stuff. And that's the last one, fun. As you might have gathered by now, I really enjoy this stuff. I enjoy the tech in it. I enjoy shooting with the gear. It really is fun. When I first started shooting mirrorless, it was fun. It was just, it kind of reinvigorated me. It was just like, oh, it's cool. There's so much different about it from the other cameras I've been shooting with. It was just fun. That's what it really came down to at the end of the day. Okay, next up, I'm going to talk about another commercial project. This is, for me, this is my most significant, most important project that I've done. This is photography about breast cancer, and the series of photos you're going to see here are of breast cancer survivors. If anybody is uncomfortable with this, you're going to see some partial nudity, you're going to see some pretty horrific scarring in here, but beautiful photos. If anybody's uncomfortable with that, now's your chance to step out. I promise won't hold it against you, just totally up to you. You want to go? Okay, here we go. So the story behind this is a friend of mine. Actually, she's now a friend. I guess she wasn't at the time. We were introduced by a mutual friend. She was working on this project, Beauty After Breast Cancer, and she wanted to make this book that would be a coffee table style book, not just to offer help and hope to those who are about to undergo breast cancer treatment, but to offer medical advice in a warm, comfortable setting. She is a nurse. She herself has undergone a double mastectomy, and she knows, even as a medical professional, how cold and horrific the whole process was. She wanted to make it better for those in the future. And so she wanted to create this book. And when she was introduced to me, she asked me if I would do a photo in the book. She was going to try and find 30, I think it was 33 she wanted, 33 photographers each to do one photo. And when she approached me about it, when we started talking about it, I had a very dear personal friend that was undergoing this at that time, and so it had a real personal connection to me. And I just said, if you do this and try to hire 33 different photographers, especially in this town, it's never going to happen. You're never going to find that many people. It's going to take you a decade to get the project done at the best. So I decided to go on with her and to do the entire project with her. Men get breast cancer too, right? It's not that commonly thought of, but it does happen. And so I decided to do this project with her. We worked on it over a couple of years. Every image in the book, except for the very first two that I shot, were shot Micro Four Thirds. And the first two were a year and something before we shot the primary thing, so I was still shooting Canon. Over that time I made the transition, and then everything was shot Micro Four Thirds. A lot of studio work, some on location, really all over the place. But just showing this as an example of well, a variety of work, obviously a commercial type project that's printed in a book. It's a beautiful big 18-inch something book, and it just, the pictures came out great. I'm super happy with them. Everybody in the book super happy with them. It was just a really incredible project to work on, and shot all with these tiny little cameras. You know, go figure, right? You don't have to have big, huge gear to shoot this type of work. So anyway, just flip through a few more of the pictures on here. The whole idea behind each one is we're trying to tell the story of the subject, try and bring out their personality, but also help to tell the story of how they got through their breast cancer. You know, for her, the dragon became this very iconic power symbol for you, totem, if you will. So she got this huge dragon tattoo put on her, but you can see over her scarring where it's gone in to hide some of the scarring and become part of her. You know, for her, for Rosie, it was all about the music. Having the ability to play music and create music was what got her through this. So each one of these, the photo is the story, the art that Sherry created. Shenny is a social media maven, if you will. She's the one who was my personal friend that was going through it, and so I, you know, of course, had to include her in the book. So big project. If you want to know more about this project, or you'd like to order a book, would very much appreciate that. Head over to beautyafterbreastcancer.com and you can check it out. Incidentally, if I'm sure there is a big town, if there's a breast cancer center here, a hospital that specializes in it, if this means anything to you at all, buy a copy of this book, bring it over to the hospital and hand it to them. Say, here, this is my gift to you. The whole point of the book is for it to be in hospitals, in the waiting rooms, in doctor's offices where women go to have breast cancer treatment, scans and so on, so they can see what's coming up. All right, let's move on to something a little bit lighter. Travel. I would love to say I'm a professional travel photographer. Not really. It's more like I'm a professional traveler and I take pictures and post them on Instagram. Don't usually get paid for my travel stuff, but it's still fun. If you enjoy photography and you enjoy travel, obviously you're going to want to do travel photography. It's just a lot of fun. And so these are just a handful of shots, just showing different kind of stuff from different parts of the world that it's apparently on automatic now, that I enjoy shooting. You know, the markets in, where is this? This is Jeju, South Korea. stuff like that is just, to me, it's just so much fun, so colorful, so different than what we're used to seeing today. I think a lot of these are shot on the Nocticron, which is a 90mm equivalent, 85mm equivalent f1.2 lens, so super shallow depth of field, beautiful portrait lens. Then here, this is Mexico, Oaxaca, Mexico. I'm going to show you a video later on about this place. But this is actually a workshop that I did a year ago, January, whenever it was. Anyway, a year ago. In Oaxaca, Mexico. It was a super fun workshop, and in that we were doing portraits, we're doing kind of travel photography, landscape, all kinds of stuff. But people photography, portrait photography, out in the wild, not in the studio, but just street portrait, but not street portrait in the sense of, got your picture, not that kind of street photography, but meeting these fascinating people all over the world and getting them to pose for a portrait. To me, that's just one of my favorite things. I just love shooting like that. This is, anybody here drunk Mezcal before? He's laughing. He's like, oh yeah, I know that stuff. It's made from the same plants as tequila. It's made from agave, but it's a very specific distillate. It's so good, if you're into that sort of thing. Anyway, this is mezcal being made. These are the piñas, what did I say? The agave plant. That's the kind of the pine, if you will, from the agave plant. It's going into this huge smoking pile of embers, and then it gets covered up with burlap sacks, and it smokes for, I forget, 4 days or something like that before they pull it out, crush it, turn it into a drink. It's good stuff. Anyway, if you like that sort of thing. So travel photography is a brilliant thing to do with these cameras. It's lightweight, right? Forget about professional work. You just like to travel. You want to travel. You want to take a good camera with you. I can take. Whose phone is that? I can take a. This is a good representation. This isn't my regular travel bag, but this is the same size. I can take a bag like this and have a body and 2 lenses fitting into here easily. Depending on the lenses, I might be able to fit a body and 4 lenses into here, or maybe a couple of bodies and 3 lenses. Will all fit in this tiny little bag. If I'm out shooting, have this over my shoulder and a camera and a lens in my hand, well, now this has got room for 4 or 5 lenses. That's an immense amount of stuff you can carry in here. Not to say you have to carry that much stuff, but if you want to, you can fit so much into a small bag. It's funny because whenever I do these shows, I always talk about how small everything is, and then people see me walk out of here with a backpack like this and a Pelican case full of things. That's because I'm here. It's not because when I travel for photography, it's just a little bag, honestly. So anyway, travel photography is just an awesome use of these, and I love doing that. Portraits. So portraits are one of the mainstays of my business. Whether it's personal portraits or commercial stuff for businesses, whatever it might be, lots of fun. And these next series of photos I show you to show a variety of shooting techniques, and just again to show that you can do anything with these mirrorless cameras. So on the left, that's big studio lighting. That is big profile. I shoot with pro photos in my studio, so big pro photo lights in the studio environment, big softbox, that sort of thing. So your traditional studio type photography. You can shoot tethered if that's what you want to do, or not, either way. And then here is out in the field, out in nature, if you will. Not nature, it's an old barn or something. But again, a portrait, and this is with small strobes, small Lumix strobes. And obviously she's being lit from the front. I think there's 2 lights. Yeah, you can see the catch lights in her eye. There's 2 lights in the front. But then the sun in the background is not the sun. That is another wireless strobe. So that is on a light stand around the corner, shooting through the broken out window, but being wirelessly triggered. So all that cool tech that you've come to love, wireless triggers on your flash, that's all built in. Just like on the other cameras, you've got all of that. Your strobes are essentially the same size as the other ones. So they're nice, big, powerful, but compact little lights that you can take with you, and obviously battery powered, battery operated, and so on. So there's that type of work that you can do. Oh good, now it's decided to, oh here we go. This is shot with LED. Now there's a huge difference in shooting LED or shooting strobe. Right, if you shoot strobe, you get a massive amount of light for a very, very short amount of time. If you're shooting LED, you get a lot less light, but it's constant. LED lights are a lot easier to set up because you know if I put a diffuser in front of it, if I bounce it off of here, if I turn the light up or down, what I see is exactly what I'm going to get. Not only with the naked eye, but looking through the camera. If you're shooting with a strobe, then you don't know what you're going to get until you take the picture, right? Because the light isn't turned on until you take the picture. It's a totally different thing. But there's other advantages to this. Other than the obvious, I can see what I'm doing in here. If you want to shoot a really high frame rate, say you want to shoot it 5 frames a second or 12 frames a second in camera, in the studio, you can't do that with strobes. Right? Strobes don't recycle fast enough for that. Maybe you can get really good strobes at a low power, maybe you can get a couple of shots per second, but you certainly can't get a lot. This particular photo, what we were trying to capture was obviously a pregnancy portrait, but the cloudy stuff around her is baby powder. And I had the idea of lighting, having this baby powder floating in the air and then lighting it with strobes to make it, well, look like this. The problem was we throw the baby powder in the air and it went straight down. It's not like it hovered in the air for a long period of time. Smoke, I have a smoke machine, it just wasn't the right consistency. Baby powder was what was going to make this work. But if I just threw the powder in the air and then fired the camera with the strobe, I'd get one shot before the powder fell, and if I didn't nail it, then I'd have to do it again and again and again, and I frankly didn't want that much baby powder in my studio. When you don't have to worry about flash recycling, you can shoot at the maximum frame rate of your camera. So this, I think, was shot on a GH4, so I don't remember now, 8 frames per second maybe? I don't remember. GH5 does like 12 now, it's gotten crazy. The new G9 will do 30. Is that right? 30 frames per second raw plus JPEG. Yeah, I think that's right. Or is it 60? It's some insane number. No, it's 60 because it'll shoot 50 shots in a row before the buffer fills, so it's less than a second. But you can get raw plus JPEG, 60 frames per second. That's ridiculous. Anyway, so to shoot 5, 10, 60 frames per second, obviously I can't have a strobe going, so I got to light it with LEDs. So that's how we did this. And the funny thing about this is her partner and I are standing on either side of her. So this story is actually great because it brings in a lot of the different tech. So LED lights frame up the shot. Obviously camera's on a tripod, I can see exactly what it looks like. We have handfuls of baby powder, we're gonna throw it in the air. We need to throw it in the air and get our hands out of the way, because we've done this a few times and we figured out what does and doesn't work. But somebody's got to push the button to take the picture. Well, my arms are only so long, and there was nobody else there to do it. So what I ended up doing was using my phone, this is another one of those really cool technology things, use my phone to connect to the camera so that I can take the picture from the phone, push the button on the phone to take a picture. So I got a handful of baby powder in one hand, phone in the other, and I throw it or whatever it is we did, and push the button on the phone, fires off a bunch of shots on the camera, and away we go. And to give you an idea of the criticalness of the timing, the frame before this, our hands are in the shot from throwing the powder. The frame after this, the powder is almost completely gone. So that's how brief that moment was to get that shot. Couldn't do that without LED. Couldn't do that without having some kind of, I mean, I could use a wired remote, but some kind of remote. And couldn't have done that without making a mess in my studio. So there you go. Standard portraits, just, bog standard, white seamless background, big studio lights. Perfectly fine to do all that kind of stuff as well. Another example of that fun stuff shot in the studio. And then a little bit more dramatic. These are, again, big studio lights using the Pro Photo lights. From your standard to more dramatic. Like something like this. This is another one of those where seeing through the viewfinder as much as you can is really going to help. Now, because it's shooting strobe, I don't see exactly what I'm going to get until I shoot it. Again, we can't work around that. But at least when I'm positioning the lights and diffusing it and getting it closer or farther away from the subject, I can get a really good example of what it's going to look like before I push that button. Here's a big group of lawyers picture. So in this case, I explained the look that I wanted to develop. This is a JPEG straight out of camera. This is the look that came out of it. I mean, I might have done some retouching since then, but this is what it looked like coming out of the camera. And to be able to show the client that on the back of the camera, or in this case I was shooting tethered to show it tethered, is pretty awesome to be able to do. It's just fun stuff. Okay, next up is, there we go, landscape and nature. Not my regular thing, just fun to do because, hey, it's beautiful out there. So just to show a couple examples of the stuff you can do. One of the big advantages of doing this type of photography and shooting mirrorless is going back to that whole size and weight thing. This is not off the side of the road. This is a hike somewhere. And I don't know about you, but if I'm going on a hike carrying camera gear, I don't want to take a backpack full of stuff. I want as little as I can. And so that's just nice to be able to do. This is where I live, so I like showing that off. It's pretty. Southern Oregon in the fall, hard to beat. And this is an exposure blending. Actually, no, I take that back. This is an extreme manipulation of curves in the file. This is a GH4 image as well. It's a couple years old now, but the original image had barely any pink in the sky there. But that's not brushed in. That's entirely, all those colors are pulled out by just manipulating the curves and pulling out the part of the image, the colors in the part of the image where I wanted it. The reason that I put it up is just to make the point that the files that you get out of these cameras are very good quality. You can really push these files and beat them up just like you can with files from the other cameras. And just because it's mirrorless, just because it's micro four thirds, doesn't mean you can't do it. You can still beat the hell out of these files and get some great stuff out of it. Weddings. Again, I don't shoot weddings. This is something that I've shot a few for friends and family. So I've just got a few up here to show you because I know obviously a lot of wedding photographers out there. And mirrorless is a really great thing for wedding photographers because again, size and weight, small gear, you're carrying cameras around all day long. Be able to get that in-camera JPEG look to see exactly what you're getting. It's just small, quiet. Oh, electronic shutter. That's a huge part of this. To be able to shoot in pure silence is huge. If you're a wedding photographer, you're going to stand up on the by the priest, whatever that's called. If you're going to stand up there by the priest and try and get those pictures, you don't want your shutter click, 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 click. Do you? Click, 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 click. Right? You don't want that. So all of these cameras have the option to enable an electronic shutter. With the electronic shutter, the only noise you will hear is the aperture opening and closing. And if you're shooting wide open, even that doesn't move. And honestly, you're the only one who's going to hear that because aperture doesn't make a whole lot of noise. But if you shoot wide open, an electronic shutter, there are 0 moving parts when you take the picture. So you have perfect silence, which is enormously awesome when you're shooting something like a wedding. Oh, this is my brother-in-law's wedding. So it's just, you got to shoot weddings for family, right? That's how that usually works. To be able to just be that discreet, moving around that quietly, nobody hears you. If you can be like a ninja, nobody even sees you, and away you go. Just a few fun wedding pictures. Love it. Slightly slower shutter speed, get the drag to get the flying rice. Oh. And again, you see all this through the camera. Okay. Let's move on to some other fun, crazy tech that's in these cameras. This is a little bit older presentation part that I have here. It's called 4K photo. The cameras actually now do 6K photo. I'm going to explain basically what this is, and then there's a video we're going to look at later that kind of re-explains part of it. So if you don't totally get it from here, don't worry, we're going to hit something else. I'll talk about it again. In a nutshell, 4K or now 6K photo is a video file. It's not a photo file. It's not a standard image. It is a video file, but it is shot in a way that is designed to extract a frame from to use as a still picture. If you shoot video, video is typically 16:9 aspect ratio, so wide aspect ratio, and it's typically shot at a slower shutter speed because you want to have a little bit of blur in the video. That sounds counterintuitive, but if you look at video that is shot very high shutter speed, it has this very staccato look to it. There are certain movies, especially action films, where you'll see this and it almost is a stroboscopic effect where dirt flying through the air just is very crisp and clean going across the scene, and you see that and your brain goes, okay, something is different about this. That's a very high shutter speed or a very narrow shutter angle if you're thinking of it that way, that allows the video to be shot that way. But normal video is not shot like that. Normal video is shot at if you're shooting 30 frames per second video, standard NTSC, then you are probably shooting at a 60th of a second. Now, 60th of a second is really slow. For still photography, if anything's moving, it's going to blur. But that's what we want in video. We want that blur. It makes it look smoother and nicer. But if you were to shoot video at 16:9 at a 60th of a second, standard video, and then pull a frame out of that, you're going to have blurry motion, right? 60th of a second. And it's this funny aspect ratio that's obviously not a still photo. It's obviously pulled out of video. 4K and 6K photo change both of those aspects. They change the aspect ratio to 4:3, so your standard full frame of the Micro Four Thirds sensor, and they default to a much higher shutter speed because the expectation, the intention is not to use this as video, but to extract a still frame. This means you get to shoot at 30 frames per second, and in the case of 4K photo, it used to be 30 frames per second, and you got an 8 megapixel still out of it. So kind of low resolution, but it's big enough for most things. Now, in today's cameras, the newest ones, the GH5 and the G9, you get 4K photo at 60 frames per second, or 6K photo, which is 18 megapixels at 30 frames per second. So imagine, if you will, you can now shoot 30 frames per second at 18 megapixel all day long, and you just have a bunch of video files that you pull, extract a frame out of. So let me show you, I have a couple examples here of how this would be used in real life. So this is a park in Tokyo, and I saw this cute couple here. They're gonna blow some bubbles, and I think it'd be great to get a shot with the bubbles just ever so perfectly in the air, but they're going across her face, and I don't want, I gotta get that perfect frame. What are the odds of getting that perfect frame? Right, so there's an example, and then this drummer, right? He's going crazy on the drums, and you can see the video looks too sharp in there. If this was video, it's like this isn't quite comfortable. It's a little bit too sharp, but that's what they look like. Okay, so now I'm gonna pull up these video files, and I'll show you how this works. come here. So bubbles. So here's the video file again. And if I just scrub through here, so I want to get a shot with the bubbles going. So now I'm going to go frame by frame, and you can see every frame, like there, that wouldn't be a good shot, right? The bubbles over her eye, that's not good. So I back up, maybe that's the one that I want, or maybe see there's a gap in here. Oop. There's a nice little gap right there. You know, you find that frame that you want. You got 30 frames per second, or now up to 60 frames per second to choose that perfect frame from. So, and then you just extract the frames. Use your video editing software, or you can do this in camera, by the way, as well. You can extract a still frame in camera. Here, the drums, the same thing. So let's get the hands when they're moving really fast, and you get that nice frozen motion on there to extract the frame that you want. It's just a really, really cool way to be able to work. All right.
What's the shutter frame?
The shutter speed?
Yeah.
I don't remember on there, but that was pretty high. It's probably 2/50 of a second, maybe more. Yeah, because it's just like shooting a still at this point. Whatever exposure combination works to get the picture. So the more light you have, then obviously the higher shutter speed you can go, and then you have even sharper motion. The thing is that when you flip the camera into 4K or 6K photo mode, it automatically defaults to that. It automatically goes, okay, higher shutter speed, as high a shutter speed as possible, because that's the expectation to pull out a frame, and again, that 4:3 aspect ratio, so it looks like a still image. So the only drawback of that is that you're getting JPEGs, you're not getting RAW files. But for stuff like this, it's great. Yeah?
Did you try that with the baby powder photo?
Did I try the baby powder photo? No, because there wouldn't have been enough light. The baby powder photo, because it was so dark, right? It's a totally dark room. The only light is as little from the LEDs. That would, well, I shouldn't know. I guess it technically would have been all right. Maybe the tech wasn't, no, the tech wasn't there yet when I did the picture. Right, because that was shot on the GH4 that predates the 4K photo mode. Right, so no, you could do that for the baby powder, absolutely. Sorry, had to get my head on straight there. Okay, strobe versus, what's up next? Oh yeah, that's right. Okay, so we've talked a little bit already about shooting strobes versus shooting constant light, and this is one of the great advantages of the live displays. This is kind of, we've covered some of this already, but it's just more examples of it. Same setup as the Chef of before, so again, that underlight there that I can dial in the color on the LED, get it exactly the way that I want. Here, this one's balancing overhead, fluorescent, whatever light with window light, but still needing to add a little bit more light to it. So I bring in that LED. A strobe would be too much in here, right? I don't need a strobe light. I just need a little bit more light. So I bring in an LED, get the color temperature so it doesn't look like there's any extra light. You have no idea where the other light is coming from. You don't even know that it's there. It's not meant to look like it is. It's not meant to look like a studio portrait. It should look like an available light ambient portrait, but it's not. It's a mix of sunlight, overhead light, and an LED to bring in the details. You know, shooting strobe, I'm not quite sure why I have these in here, except to show the words thing upside down. Consistency in portraits, honestly I don't remember why I have this up there, but they're portraits. This is fun. So this is one of the disadvantages of shooting with strobes can be that you get too much light. If you take a studio strobe and you dial it down all the way, it can still be too much light for you to shoot at, let's say, f2. Or f1.2, because you want that really, really shallow depth of field. So a big studio light, you can't turn down far enough. But with an LED, because it's less light, you can. So you can do something where you get a really, really shallow depth of field in a studio environment because you're shooting with LED as opposed to shooting with strobes. It's just not something you can do with strobes. It's just too much light. I have one of my favorite modifiers, this big Octabox, and I have cut out multiple sheets of acetate to lay over it so that I can knock the light down with the light set to its lowest setting, put this on there, trying to bring it down, but I can't shoot wide open on my favorite portrait lens. So if I really want that shallow depth of field, I just can't do it with strobe. I have to go LED. No, just another one of those things. Example of other types of work. So now we're just getting into examples of other things that can be done, but there are some specific advantages here. So real estate photography. Yeah, no one's making a killing doing this, but there's money, right? So occasionally you get to photograph a nice home. It's fun thing about real estate photography for me is usually they want pictures that are very just kind of clean and normal and I'd say boring. But this client liked this kind of more filmic, vintagey look to the photos that matched the house. So that was really fun. But this, okay, I don't know why it's, did I pause it? No, of course not. I don't know why these are on auto. It was not intentional, but let me see. We'll go back to, oh, stop moving. Nah. I want this picture. that one or this one's probably better. Either one. I'm just going to leave it like that. You can see, you get the idea. I don't know why, I forgot it was on auto. But balancing the inside with the outside, right? This is a totally common thing you see in real estate photography, right? You can see the inside and the outside at the same time, right? Okay, so how is this done? It's typically HDR, right? You could light this, expose for the outside. Obviously, I can't change the lighting outside the windows, so I can set up a bunch of studio lights and light this. But A, it's a lot of work. B, you might have an environment that's too big that you can't possibly, sorry, I can't leave this up. It's got a mind of its own. I can't possibly get enough lights to fill an entire big, huge house, and I sure as heck can't do it for the paltry amount of money that I'm getting paid as a real estate photographer. So bringing in studio lights, unless it's a really special, specific job, just isn't even an option. So that means you got to shoot HDR. Right? This is how all real estate photography is done these days. It's all shot HDR. And if you walk up to pretty much any real estate window anywhere in town, you look at their offerings, they all have this horrible HDR look. It's so blatantly overprocessed. The colors are super saturated. It's like unless you went out onto your lawn with a can of spray paint, there is no way your lawn looks like that. The sky is impossibly blue. I'm sorry, but it's never that blue. Right? They look ridiculous. But it's the way that most people process HDR, and if you want to have an exposure where you can see the inside of the kitchen and see the view through the kitchen window, that's how you have to do it, exposure blending. That exposure blending doesn't have to be that ridiculous. It's just the way that most people choose to do it. But I bring all this up because obviously you can shoot HDR on any camera in the world. All you're doing is bracketing the pictures and then taking them into Photoshop or whatever and blending them together. But the Lumix cameras have a built-in HDR mode that, well, no, not as good as taking it in and doing it by hand in dedicated software. For something like real estate, it's good enough. And what that means is I can set up the camera on a tripod and frame up my scene, push the button, the camera's going to go click, click, click. It's going to take 3 pictures and then blend them together into an HDR, and I can see that JPEG on my camera immediately after it's shot, and I can go, yep, that's it. I have no more processing. That JPEG is what's getting delivered to the client. Now, if it's a particularly challenging scene, if I'm looking at going, ooh, you know, I don't know, maybe I didn't quite do it, then I'll flip the mode on my camera and I'll shoot a sequence of raw files, and from those raw files, then we can generate a better HDR. But 9 out of 10 shots, if not more than that, are just straight out of the camera, auto HDR, done and move on. And that's something that's built into the Lumix cameras, which is a super, super cool feature to have. Okay, next. Now we're getting into the world of video. And the first couple of videos I'm going to show you are actually product videos for Panasonic that I did. So it's a little bit meta, but I did the video. The videos are, of course, all shot on Panasonic cameras, Lumix cameras. Some of them are about Lumix cameras or Lumix features. But this is a multi-thing. You're going to see the video production, see video that's done with these cameras, but also learn some features about it. I just realized I don't have speakers on here. That's a problem. Does this thing have any decent sound on it, this projector? Well, do you know? Can we plug? I totally forgot about that. Can we plug in to speakers? Yeah, I have a grab speaker. Thanks. Okay, cool. Okay, sorry. I just realized that I didn't plug speakers in today. Let's take this opportunity while I was getting that to answer any questions that might be out there. Do you guys have any questions? I'm also going to look and see if there's anything in the chat room that people are asking about.
Quick question.
Yes.
When you do your international travel,
yeah,
do you still have to take releases to get people to sign off, or
okay.
Because of being out of the country, you just kind of brush over that and use them however you're going to use them? Okay,
so the question is, for those who couldn't hear, the question is, when I travel internationally, do I worry about model releases? And I assume you're talking about street photography. Yeah, because if I'm shooting for a client, and then there's model releases, of course, right? But for street photography. Okay, so you have to be very careful to obey the laws of the nation you're in and to make sure that you are aware of what those laws are. Most places, it's pretty simple. If you're in public, like here in the US, if you're in public, if the person you're photographing has no reasonable expectation of privacy, then you can take their picture and you can use it for non-commercial purposes. Right, if I see you on the street, I can take your picture and put it on my blog, put it on my social media, that's fine. But if I take that picture that I just took of you on the street and I put it on a Coca-Cola ad, now I've got a problem. That was a unlicensed use of your image for commercial purposes.
If they're not identifiable?
Oh, if they're not identifiable, that's different. Yeah, if you can't tell who the person is, then it never matters. But if you can tell who the person is, if you can look at that and go, that's me, why am I in a Coca-Cola ad? I've got a problem as the photographer. So, and that's US law, and that is standard in most countries. Now, some countries have much stricter laws where you're not allowed to shoot on the street like that. People have different approaches to it. People might get very offended. So you want to be aware of the laws and of the culture of where you are.
Okay.
Cool. Let's see how good this is.
So this is going to be an obvious question, but if that photo you took on the street, you wind up blowing up and putting in a show for sale, is that a commercial use of that person?
That's a gray area. So the question is, if you use a street photography, a photo shot as a street photography like this, no license, no release, and you print it and sell it as a print, as an art piece, is that commercial? The courts have, I believe, gone both ways on that. There was a huge case a few years ago in New York about it, and I'm pretty sure that it went to the photographer. The photographer was okay. The judge decided that it was within the legal use because it was considered art. I think that's how that case went. That is definitely a gray area, though. There is no real easy, hard line on that one.
Where it may be easier is if you go to a place like a Renaissance fair where people are dressed up and you use one of those photos. Now, isn't that...
Well, so if you're in somewhere like, so the question again is if you're in somewhere like a Renaissance fair and you do the same thing, you're taking pictures there. The Renaissance fair example, that's a private paid entrance location, and so they may have their own rules. There is still this reasonable, you don't have a reasonable expectation of privacy because you are out in public, it's just that you had to pay to get in there. So that venue may have its own rules. Sometimes those venues will have signs on there as you walk in that say, by reading this sign or walking past this sign, you acknowledge that you may be photographed, in which case, good to go. But yeah, if you want to use photographs of that for commercial, definitely not for commercial. Never commercial without a license, without a model release. For non-commercial use of putting on your website, well, whatever, it's going to be fine. But if you get into that, I want to sell the prints, then again, bit of a gray area.
But again, we're talking about people dressed in costume.
Yeah, but if you still identify them, you might be dressed up like the Wizard of Oz, but if I can see that it's you, it's still you. Doesn't matter what you're wearing.
And dressed up as a Wizard of Oz, I'm expecting privacy.
Well, so that gets into a whole other conversation. But if I take a photograph of you through your living room window, I'm standing out in the street. I'm on the street. I'm in public. You're at home. And I'm photographing through your living room window. That's a problem, right? That's a violation of privacy. If you are in your backyard, even, and I'm outside, and I can see through the trees or see over the fence and see you and take a picture, that's not okay. That is, you have an expectation of privacy, even though it's kind of exposed. You're not in public. You're in a private space. But as soon as you step out on the street, your expectation for privacy goes away. You are in public right now. Okay, let's see if this speaker works. Make sure it's connected to that. Sorry? I guess I have to turn it on. Oh, this has a regular speaker port. Regular thing. Let's see. Hopefully you'll be able to hear this. Yes, no, yes, no. Hey, cool. It's pretty loud.
I'm PhotoJoseph, photographic storyteller and a Lumix luminary. My Panasonic Lumix GX8 just got an incredible free firmware upgrade with a brand new feature called Post Focus.
It's like 2 years old.
The idea behind Post Focus is that you can select what part of the photo you want to be in focus after you take the picture. And how it works is really, really clever. Post Focus is a new 4K photo mode. In case you're not familiar with 4K photo, let me tell you about that first. We all know that modern cameras can shoot at a pretty fast frame rate, or frames per second. Some cameras can shoot 3 to 5 frames per second, others can shoot 6 or 7, and some can even shoot 11 or 12 frames per second. But when you're shooting in 4K photo mode, you're not shooting regular photos. You're technically shooting 4K video at 30 frames per second, then saving individual frames of video as stills. A single frame of 4K video is over 8 megapixels. At 300 ppi, an 8 megapixel photo can be printed at more than 8 by 10 inches. That's a magazine cover. And of course, it's way more pixels than you need to share on the web. So while 8 megapixels seems small by modern standards, and certainly is smaller than the 20 megapixels that the GX8 shoots stills at, it's plenty of resolution for most prints, and certainly all web use. When you shoot in post-focus mode, the camera automatically racks focus all the way through your scene, while recording in 4K photo mode. That means you can go back in later and choose the frame that's focused on the exact spot you want. This is what you see on camera when shooting in post-focus. As the camera records, focus moves from the front to the back of the scene. The green rectangles show what the camera is focusing on. Then, to view different parts of the photo in focus, you just tap the screen. Focus snaps to wherever you touch, so you can save that frame. Or to get really precise, you can zoom in and turn on focus peaking, and slide the scrubber to choose the precise frame where focus is exactly where you want it. Then the export button saves that frame as an 8 megapixel JPEG. Post-focus is incredible. It opens up a whole new world of exploration and opportunity. I took a Panasonic GX85 to San Francisco to see just where post-focus would come in handy, and I found all kinds of great uses for it. First off, any scene where you're not sure where the best point of focus would be is a great place to start with post-focus. Here I'm shooting sea lions, but the seagull's a great element too. Once shot, I can choose to save one frame, or the other, or both. You already saw the figurines in the Chinatown shop, which was a great place to explore post-focus. Cool statues, colorful dolls, teacups, this guy, endless opportunities. Sometimes you know exactly what you want to focus on, in which case, just shoot it. But sometimes you're not sure what will make the most interesting picture. I think that makes post-focus a great educational tool for learning and exploring photography. Let's say you're taking a shot of your food, like this beautiful setup here. Should you focus on the food in the front, on the teacup, the mochi in the back? Using post-focus, you can shoot it once and explore it later, and then decide what you like best. Another place I took the camera was to the San Francisco Botanical Gardens to shoot some flowers. When you're shooting macro, your depth of field is really shallow, which means you have tons of choices on where to focus. You could easily shoot a dozen different focus photos of a flower, but later wish you'd focused on a totally different spot. With post-focus, that's no longer a concern. Also, while post-focus isn't designed for action photography, it turns out that it's a great tool for photographing flowers that are bouncing around in the wind. If you fire off a few post-focus shots, you're going to get many perfectly sharp photos, even though the flower's moving. In fact, I even found a bee that had obviously no interest in sitting still, yet I managed to get some really nice shots of her. Post-focus is an exciting new feature with tons of potential. In this video, we've only scratched the surface and only talked about saving frames in camera. But you can do that in the computer as well, and even utilize a series of frames for focus stacking. Be sure to watch the next video to learn all about that. And to learn more about post-focus and 4K photo in general, visit the URL on your screen now.
All right, so first of all, the feature itself is super cool. I'll just leave that up. The post-focus capability is really, really fun to play with for the things you saw there. Yeah?
Is that a feature that's unique to a particular camera, or is that a software upgrade that's available to the other models?
The question is that feature unique to a specific camera or a software upgrade available to other models? It first came out on the GX8, which is, I think, about 2 years old now. I think this video is about 2 years old. It has been included in every camera since then. So it's in the GH5, it's in the upcoming G9, it's in the G85. I think it's in the GX85. Now I'd have to check beyond that what other models. But it's like once it was introduced, it's been included in every model going forward. Do you have a camera?
G7.
I don't think it's in the G7. I don't think it is. I don't remember for sure. Actually, it's the G7 is what's shooting the video right now, the live stream on this. And I don't think that feature's in there.
I think there's 4K photo lineup, but I'm not sure.
I don't remember. I'd have to look back. Yeah, I'd have to look back. No. But that's, to that question, that's like this video said, that was a feature that was added later. That was one of those, oh, you bought this camera, and then 6 months or a year later, Panasonic released a firmware update to add this feature to it. That's pretty cool. How many other cameras can you buy that are going to get better over time instead of just get old? Oh, love that. One of the things about this video too, you noticed, so the shot of me at the desk, there were two shots, right? There was the wide shot and the close-up shot. Has anybody out here seen my GH5 training? A couple of you have. Okay. That is another example, like this one, where it appears that there were multiple cameras on me, or on your subject, whatever it might be, the tight shot and the wide shot. This video you just saw, and the Lumix GH5 training, and a bunch of other stuff that I've done, is delivered in 1080p, because that's all that the client needs or wants or whatever, 1080p. But I shoot it in 4K. 4K is twice the width and twice the height of 1080p. So it's 4 times as much data. that means that I can shoot a wide shot in 4K and deliver and take that, scale it down to 1080p, but then I can also punch into the shot. I can crop a piece of that footage out and still have full resolution. I'm not, as long as I don't go past 2x in this case, because it's twice as big, right? As long as I don't go past 2x zoomed in, I'm not adding any data, I'm not interpolating any data. I'm still scaling down, or at best going pixel for pixel. So that means that I can get 2 cameras out of a single camera view. Or even more. Let's say I'm doing an interview, a 2-person interview. I can have a camera on me and another person here. I can have a wide shot that's both of us, and then I can punch in on me and punch in on them, and have a 3-camera shoot from a single camera. I do this all the time for video editing. And not only does it give you the ability to punch in because you need a close-up, it also gives you a great way to edit around a mistake. So let's say that I got a camera on me right now, and I'm doing a video to talk about whatever feature. I'm talking about the feature, and then oh yeah, and then the feature was, and then, all right, and now I got the, finally got the line right. Okay, so now I got the line right, but I have to edit around this. Somehow or another I have to edit around it. So how do I go from me talking here to me talking here and have it be a clean cut? You punch into it, right? By punching in, you can forgive a lot of movement. You can forgive a lot of change in the scene because it's gone to a different camera angle. And so it allows you to edit around mistakes or just whatever natural edit points in the video. I just want to cut this piece out and cut to it without having to reshoot it, without having to actually have a second camera in place. Super, super useful to be able to have that. Oh, one of the many advantages of shooting 4K, but when it comes to video, it's I almost never shoot HD anymore. I almost always shoot 4K. Let's see, what's the next one? How are we on time? Let's see here. 12. Oh, we got plenty of time. Well, let's watch some more videos. Well, nah, let's not do that one. I got a couple I'm going to play, and then we can do some live stuff in here. We'll take a little break and we'll do some live stuff. Okay, let's do this one first. So this is another video about a Panasonic product. This is about the GX85, which I said in the beginning is one of my personal favorites. It's a really small, lightweight, great travel camera. This was shot, any video that you see me in was obviously shot by somebody else, and that was shot on GH4. This predates the GH5. Any video that I'm not in is shot on the GX85. So you're talking about, at the time, the flagship pro video camera down to the small little pocket GX85. And other than the fact that we color graded them slightly differently so that there was a slight visual difference, quality-wise, there is no difference. You can't tell the difference in them. They're just both gorgeous. So let me just play this. Why don't you turn off the second light while this is playing? Thanks.
When it comes to street photography, New Orleans is one of the greatest cities I've ever explored. So much color, so much history, so many amazing people.
Happy Tuesday!
What's not to love? I took the GX85 everywhere, wandering the streets, to restaurants, museums, even on a horse-drawn carriage. And I love how this camera performed. It's so compact that I could easily fit the camera in 2 or 3 lenses in my little camera bag. The flip-up LCD allowed me to shoot from waist level, and the built-in stabilization kept my video nice and smooth. One of the standout features in this new camera is that there's no anti-aliasing filter on the sensor. It turns out this makes for amazingly sharp photos, which became really obvious when I shot in black and white. On the other hand, the richness of colors in this new Lumix really blew me away. I met this wonderful artist called Frenchie, and he invited me into his studio to shoot him working. The phenomenal colors of his artwork look so incredible on the back of my camera, and those intense colors look exactly the same when shooting 4K video. I love shooting at night, but I don't like carrying a tripod. So the dual stabilization in the GX85, where the sensor and the lens move together to keep shots steady, was awesome. It allowed me to shoot handheld everywhere I went. Of course, not all photography is fast-paced, and taking time to explore the early morning light at the Beauregard Kai's house is a great example of that. Without a tripod, shooting handheld at a 20th of a second was easy, and my shots turned out perfectly sharp. I love food, so getting a few minutes to shoot in the kitchen of the famous Giacomo's restaurant was a blast. It's fast-paced, and I was always in the way. But one of the latest developments in photography that was incredibly useful in this situation is 4K photo mode, which basically lets me shoot 8 megapixel stills at 30 frames per second. Without a doubt, the highlight of my trip was seeing little Freddie King play the blues on a back porch in New Orleans. Everything came together here. The incredible colors that feel so right in the city. Jumping between video and stills by just pushing a different button. And of course, portraiture. My favorite moment and favorite photo from this visit is seen in this portrait. If there is ever a character that sums up the soul of New Orleans, it's little Freddie King.
Okay, bye-bye.
I'm PhotoJoseph, photographic storyteller and Lumix luminaire.
Panasonic.
All right, go ahead and bring the lights on. Thank you. So that's, again, all shot on Lumix cameras. That was actually delivered in 4K. You can tell it looked beautiful, great colors, great saturation. Just the whole thing came out beautifully. And it's a fun example of what you can do with the Panasonic cameras on a total commercial level. Now, let's see, I got two more I want to play for you. This is, so I talked about the workshop that I did in Oaxaca, Mexico. You saw some of the portraits that I did there. This is a promo video that I created after the workshop using video and photo that I shot while on the workshop. Got all that? This is shot on a big mix of cameras. I think some of it is, some is GX85, some GX8, and some GH4. Because, you know, I can't just travel with one camera. That would be silly. So again, just showing off the capabilities of what can be done even with the smallest cameras. The video quality, beautiful. Obviously the still photography all comes out really nice. It's a great system. Okay, last one. This is a much shorter video. This is much more recent. This is just a couple weeks ago. And this is actually shot for my YouTube channel. But the fun thing about this is kind of an experiment, but also to show off a specific technology, specific thing, and that's the iPhone 10. Anybody here have an iPhone 10? They're kind of ridiculous. Yeah, right on. That notch is really dumb, right? It's dumb. Well, you're going to want to watch this video later on your iPhone 10 if you haven't seen it yet, but you're going to see the notch actually show up in this video. Also, you're going to notice this video is much wider aspect ratio. Because the iPhone 10 is a 19.5:9 aspect ratio as opposed to 16:9, this video is shot in 4K and cropped to the size to fill the iPhone 10. So it's filling the screen of the iPhone 10, and the notch you'll see is being used as an advantage in here. You're going to see the notch show up in this video for a second. Plus, it was just kind of fun. Oh, and this is about the Lumix G9, which is the next camera that's coming. If you haven't heard about this, it's the new flagship still photography camera, where I talked about the GH5 being really focused on the video shooter. It's really a videographer's camera that does amazing stills. The G9 is really the pro still photographer's camera that also shoots amazing video. And that's been announced. There's some features released on it, and I've got my hands on one for a little bit. So the video you're seeing here is shot on a GH5, but the stills were shot with the G9. You'll get it once I hit play. So that's the little tab. Comes out where the slot goes. Then on YouTube, that's where the closing graphics come up. So just a fun little thing. You can go bring the lights back up. It's just a fun little thing, but again, okay. Goes for 20 seconds because that's how the YouTube thing ends. Anyway, you know, waterproof, weather sealed, water sealed. These cameras can shoot in, these are the pro cameras, can shoot in any kind of conditions.